October 14th, 1792. The sun-bleached expanse of the Santa Rosa Plain, Alta California. The air is still, thick with the scent of dry grass, wild lilac, and the bitter smell of dust kicked up by 300 steel-shod hooves. It hangs in a golden haze behind the column, a slowly settling ghost of their passage. You are here, riding somewhere in the middle of this serpent of leather and iron, the rhythmic creak of your saddle a constant companion to the jingle of spurs and harness. Ahead, at the column's point, rides Capitán Alejandro de Vargas. He sits his Andalusian stallion, Tuerno, not like a man, but like a monument cast in bronze, fused to the saddle. His Mauryan helmet, plumed and polished, catches the morning light, a blinding star of imperial authority in this vast, untamed land. His breastplate, a masterpiece of Toledan steel, is etched with the cross of Santiago, and the hilt of his rapier glints with silver wire. He is the very picture of Spanish power, an unwavering instrument of crown and cross. Beside him, riding a less ostentatious but equally sturdy bay gelding, is Sargento Mateo Jimenez. Mateo is older, his face a roadmap of campaigns fought from the deserts of Sonora to the mosquito-infested coasts of the south. His helmet is unplumed, dented near the brim, and his leather cuirass is scuffed and stained with the memory of a dozen skirmishes. Where Vargas sees a canvas for glory, Mateo sees only the familiar ingredients of trouble. Too much heat, not enough water, and a quiet that feels less like peace and more like a held breath. The expedition has been marching since dawn, leaving the half-built walls of the new presidio at their backs. The official purpose, as stated in Vargas's report to the governor, is a demonstration of sovereignty and the recovery of several neophytes who fled the nearby mission. The unofficial purpose, understood by every leather-faced soldado de cuera in the column, is punishment. A village of the people they call the Pomo, the ones who live by the Great Lake to the north, had refused the friars' request for laborers. They had not been defiant, merely firm. They had offered baskets and obsidian, but not their sons and daughters. This quiet refusal was, to Capitán Vargas, an act of insolence that could not be tolerated. An untended spark of defiance could, in his experience, become a wildfire that consumed entire territories. So here they ride, 75 lancers, a moving fortress of hardened men and trained warhorses, come to teach a lesson in obedience. The horses are the true projection of their power. They are massive beasts, born and bred for war, their disciplined tread shaking the very ground. To the native peoples of this land, who have never seen such animals, they are terrifying apparitions, unstoppable, supernatural creatures of conquest. Vargas knows this. He relies on it. The shock and awe of a cavalry charge has broken the will of tribes 100 times more numerous than the small band they seek today. As the sun climbs higher, the heat intensifies. Sweat traces clean paths through the grime on the soldiers' faces. They shift in their saddles, their multi-layered leather jackets, the cueras that give them their name, feeling less like armor and more like ovens. Up ahead, Vargas raises a gauntleted hand. The column halts, the sudden silence broken only by the snorting of horses and the creak of cooling leather. Vargas is looking at tracks. A scout, a wiry Coahuilan man named Coyo, dismounts and kneels, tracing the impressions in the dirt with a calloused finger. He speaks in low, rapid Spanish. They are close, Capitán. Not many, maybe 40, 50 men. They move without hurry. They know we are coming. Vargas smirks, a flash of white teeth in his sun-darkened face. Let them know. Let them see the thunder of God approach. It will make the lesson more memorable. Mateo, ever the pragmatist, scans the horizon. The plain here is not entirely flat. It's dotted with clusters of ancient oaks and low rolling hills that ripple toward the hazy blue mountains in the distance. The grass is tall in places, a sea of pale gold that could hide a man or 100. This is their land, Capitán, Mateo says, his voice a low rumble. They will not fight in the open, not against the horses. Vargas turns his gaze on the sergeant, his eyes cold and sharp as flint. They will fight where we find them, Mateo, and they will break, as they always do. Have you forgotten the fields of the Yuma? The charges against the Apache? These people are simple basket weavers and fishermen. They have no concept of war. He gestures forward with his hand, the column lurching back into motion. They have arrows. We have steel. They have bare feet. We have warhorses. The conclusion is preordained. They ride for another hour before they see them. The plain opens into a wide, shallow basin, maybe a mile across. At the far end, just before the land begins to rise again into oak-studded hills, a line of men has formed. They are not hidden. They are waiting. There are 50 of them, perhaps 60. From this distance, they are little more than dark silhouettes against the pale grass. They carry no bright banners, wear no shining armor. They are figures of earth and shadow. Vargas halts the column again, this time drawing his spyglass from a saddlebag. He raises it to his eye, the brass tube glinting. The world contracts to a single magnified circle. He sees them clearly now. They are lean, powerful men, their skin the color of rich redwood soil. They wear little, save for deerskin loincloths. Some have streaks of black and white paint on their faces and chests. Most hold long spears tipped with what looks like black glass, obsidian, sharp enough to shave with. A few carry bows, but it's what a larger group of them hold that makes Vargas pause. He squints, adjusting the focus. They are not slings, not precisely. Each man holds a cord, perhaps the length of his arm, made of twisted sinew or fiber. At the end of the cord are 2 or 3 stones, each about the size of a hen's egg, encased in a net of leather. They are just standing there, holding these strange implements, watching the Spanish line. Vargas lowers the spyglass, a sound of contemptuous laughter escaping his lips. "By the saints," he chuckles, turning to Mateo. "Look, they mean to fight us with pebbles on a string." Mateo takes the offered spyglass. He looks for a long moment, his brow furrowed. He sees the same thing Vargas did, but he feels no amusement. He sees the stillness of the men, the way they stand, feet planted, their balance perfect. He sees the coordinated way they hold their weapons, not loosely, but with a practiced readiness. They are not a mob, they are a disciplined line. "I do not know what those are, Capitan," Mateo says, handing the glass back, "but they are not afraid. A man who is not afraid is a man who has a plan." Vargas scoffs, his good humor returning. "Their plan is to die with honor, then. A foolish plan, but one I am happy to accommodate. Form the line, lances ready. We will ride through them once, and this will be over before the midday meal." The orders are shouted down the line, the practiced commands of non-commissioned officers echoing in the still air. The column of 3 transforms into a wide front of 75 lances, a glittering hedge of steel points aimed at the small band of warriors. The horses sense the change, their energy shifting from the plodding monotony of the march to the electric anticipation of the charge. They stamp their feet, tossing their heads, their breath misting in the cool morning air. The soldiers grip their lances, settling their shields on their arms. They are a machine, honed and perfected over centuries of warfare, an engine of conquest designed for this exact purpose, to shatter a line of foot soldiers with unstoppable momentum. Across the basin, the Pomo warriors watch the transformation. One man stands slightly ahead of the others. He is taller, his shoulders broader, with a single eagle feather tied in his black hair. This is Cajan. He has watched the Spanish for years. He has seen them from the hills, seen their power, but he has also seen their arrogance. He has studied the horses, not as demons, but as animals. He has watched how they move, how they run, how their powerful legs carry them, and he has noticed their one great weakness. They are powerful, yes, but they are also fragile.
They run on 4 slender poles of bone. He turns to his men. His voice is not loud, but it carries with absolute authority. He speaks of the plan they have practiced for weeks in a hidden meadow, using deer as targets. He reminds them of the timing, not too soon. Let the thunder come close. Let the earth shake. Fear is a visitor. Let it pass through you, but do not let it stay. Then he turns back to face the glittering line of steel, and he waits.
The two lines face each other across 1,000 yards of sun-scorched earth. It is a tableau of profound contrast. On one side, the Spanish cavalry is a study in geometric precision and metallic light. 75 riders form a single, unwavering rank, their lances held upright, creating a forest of deadly steel poles. The sun glints off polished helmets, the silver conchos on their saddles, and the cruel, sharp points of their weapons. Their horses, sensing the coming violence, shift and snort, their massive bodies radiating a contained energy that makes the air itself seem to hum. The soldiers sit straight-backed, their faces grim or eager, each man a component in a larger, seemingly invincible machine. They are loud. The jingle of their harness, the clatter of a dropped gauntlet, the low murmur of conversation, and the occasional nervous laughter all blend into a sound of confident power. Capitán Vargas rides slowly along the front of his line, his stallion Truno prancing, eager for the release of the charge. He holds his sword aloft, its polished blade a sliver of captured sunlight. "Soldiers of Spain!" His voice booms, carrying easily across the open space. "Before you stands a pitiful collection of heathens who have dared to defy God and King. They arm themselves with children's toys. We will ride them down like the dry grass under your horses' hooves. For Castile, for Santiago." A ragged cheer goes up from the line, a guttural roar of men who have been promised an easy, glorious victory. They look at the distant line of Pomo warriors and see what their captain sees, a brief, bloody obstacle on the path to conquest. On the other side, the Pomo line is the antithesis of the Spanish formation. They are quiet. The only sounds are the whisper of the wind through the tall grass and the rhythmic, almost imperceptible thrumming of Cahan's lead thrower tapping his weighted cords against his thigh. They are not in a perfectly straight line, but a gentle, shallow crescent, its horns aimed slightly forward. They are part of the landscape, their brown skin and dark hair blending with the colors of the earth. They stand with a deep, rooted stillness, their bare feet planted firmly in the soil of their ancestors. You can feel their patience, a living thing that stretches across the field, a silent challenge to the Spaniards' noisy bravado. They are not a machine, they are an organism. 58 men breathing as one, their senses alive to every nuance of their environment. Luhu, a young warrior standing near the center of the line, feels his heart hammering against his ribs. He has never faced the Spanish before. He has only heard the stories of men who ride giant deer, who carry sticks that speak with thunder and lightning, whose knives are so long they can kill you from horseback. He looks at them now, and the stories feel terrifyingly real. The horses are larger than he ever imagined, their eyes wild and intelligent. The men atop them look like gods of metal, invulnerable. He tightens his grip on his lika, the weapon of 2 stones and a cord. He has practiced with since he was a boy, first for hunting geese and rabbits, and now for this. The smooth, heavy stones feel small and inadequate in his hand. Cahan sees the boy's fear. He does not turn his head, but his voice reaches Luhu, low and calm. "Breathe, Luhu. Feel the earth beneath your feet. It is ours. It remembers us. Those men, they are not gods. They sit high up, disconnected from the ground. Their power is not their own. It is in the beast they ride, and the beast is just flesh and bone." He pauses, letting the words sink in. "Watch their legs,
only their legs. Do not look at the shiny metal or the angry faces. Forget the man, see only the horse's legs. That is your target. That is their weakness. Luhu takes a slow, deep breath, forcing the air into his lungs. He does as Kahan says, focusing his eyes past the lances and the armor down to where the horses meet the earth. He sees the powerful muscles, the taut tendons, the slender cannon bones. He visualizes the flight of his lika, the spinning stones, the wrapping cord. His fear does not vanish, but it recedes, replaced by a sharp, cold focus. He knows his task. He is not fighting a metal god. He is hunting a very large, very fast animal. Back on the Spanish line, the mockery continues. A burly corporal named Rico, his face flushed with wine from his waterskin, calls out, his voice thick with derision. Look at them. Are they going to play games with us? Or perhaps they think they can fish for our horses. His companions laugh. They see the Pomo warriors beginning to swing their weighted cords, slowly at first, then faster and faster, a low whirring sound beginning to drift across the plain, like a swarm of rising insects. The sight is strange, almost comical. It looks like a bizarre ritual, not a preparation for battle. "What is that buzzing?" asks another soldier. "Are they trying to sing us to sleep?" Vargas himself smiles. The sheer absurdity of it reinforces his certainty. These people have no understanding of true warfare. They have no answer to the charge. He turns to his trumpeter, a young man with wide, eager eyes. "Sound the advance. A trot first. Let them savor their last moments." The trumpet cuts through the air, a series of sharp, brazen notes that signal the beginning of the end. The Spanish line lurches forward as one, moving from a standstill to a coordinated trot. The ground begins to tremble, a low, deep vibration that travels from the hooves of the horses through the soil and into the bare feet of the Pomo warriors. The sound grows, a rhythmic drumming of 300 hooves, a promise of impending destruction. Kahan remains perfectly still, his own lika a blur of motion at his side. The whirring sound from his line intensifies, a single, menacing drone that rises in pitch as the Spanish advance. He watches the distance close. 1,000 yards becomes 800. 800 becomes 600. The faces of the Spanish riders are now visible, their expressions a mixture of grim determination and contemptuous glee. He can see the froth on the lips of their horses. The drumming of the hooves is no longer just a sound, it is a physical force, a pressure against his chest. Luhu feels a fresh surge of adrenaline. The earth is shaking violently now. It's hard to stand, hard to think. The wall of horses is immense, a living avalanche of muscle and steel bearing down on them. His instinct screams at him to run, to flee into the hills. But he looks to his left and sees Kahan, solid as an ancient oak, his eyes fixed, his arm a spinning wheel of controlled energy. Kahan's calm is an anchor in the storm of Luhu's fear. He holds his ground. At 400 yards, Vargas raises his sword high. The trumpeter sounds another call, sharper and more urgent than the last. "Carga!" The cry is taken up by the riders. "Santiago and a ellos!" The trot explodes into a full gallop. The horses lower their heads, their powerful hindquarters digging into the earth, propelling them forward with terrifying speed. The lances are no longer upright, but lowered, a picket fence of steel points aimed directly at the chests of the Pomo warriors. The drumming of hooves becomes a deafening thunder, a continuous roar that drowns out all other sound. This is the moment that has broken armies across continents. The sight, the sound, the sheer physical force of it is designed to shatter the nerve of any infantry line. The Spanish riders brace themselves for the impact, for the familiar sensation of their lances striking flesh and bone, for the screams of the dying as their line is trampled into the dust. They are a force of nature, unstoppable, inevitable. Across the field, Kahan takes one step forward. The time is now. He does not shout. He simply raises his left hand, fingers spread wide. It is the signal they have practiced until it was as natural as breathing. All along the crescent line, 58 arms move as one. They have one heartbeat, one purpose. The moment of truth has arrived.
The world for the Spanish lancers has compressed into a narrow tunnel of vision. There is only the rushing wind, the thunder of their own charge, and the line of defiant, maddeningly still figures growing rapidly larger in front of them. Capitán Vargas is at the peak of his power, a demigod of war born on the back of his magnificent stallion. The thrill of the charge is a potent drug, clearing his mind of all doubt, filling him with a sense of absolute divine right. He has selected his target, the tall one with the eagle feather, the leader. He will have the honor of spitting this savage chieftain on his lance, a symbolic gesture to break the heart of their resistance before his men mop up the rest. He leans forward in his saddle, his weight perfectly balanced, the shaft of his 12-foot ash lance tucked securely under his arm, its point unwavering. The distance closes with shocking speed. 200 yards, 150. The Pomo warriors are now distinct individuals, their faces painted, their eyes wide and dark. Yet they do not run. They do not even knock arrows to their bows. They just continue to spin those absurd, whirring toys. The fools. The glorious, suicidal fools. Then, at precisely 100 yards, a distance Vargas's lancers could cover in less than 5 heartbeats, the Pomo leader, Cahan, gives the signal. It is not a shout that would be lost in the din, but a simple, fluid motion. He takes one more step, pivots on his back foot, and unleashes his spinning weapon. His entire body uncoils like a striking snake, the movement flowing from his feet, through his hips, up his spine, and out through his arm. The lika is not thrown high, like a stone from a sling aimed at a man's head. It is released low, with a whip-like snap of the wrist, its trajectory nearly parallel to the ground. The cord, now fully extended, sings through the air, the 2 weighted stones spinning in a dizzying horizontal orbit. It does not fly straight. It skims the tops of the golden grass, a blurred, almost invisible line of motion. In the instant after Cahan throws, the entire Pomo line moves in perfect, horrifying unison. 57 other warriors release their weapons in the exact same manner. The air, which moments before was filled only with the sound of the Spanish charge, is now overlaid with a new, terrifying noise. The sharp collective hiss of nearly 60 weighted cords cutting through the atmosphere. It is the sound of a giant serpent striking, a sound that does not belong on a battlefield of men. For the briefest of moments, the Spanish riders are confused. They were braced for a volley of arrows, something they could deflect with their shields or endure with their leather armor. They were not prepared for this. They see no projectiles arcing through the sky. There is only a strange, low-flying swarm of, what, cords? Stones? It is a threat they cannot comprehend, a form of attack so alien to their doctrine of war that their minds refuse to process it. Sargento Mateo, riding on the far left flank, sees it more clearly than most. He watches the volley leave the Pomo line, and for a split second he understands. They are not aiming for the riders. They are not aiming for the horses' chests or heads. They are aiming lower, much lower. A cold knot of dread tightens in his stomach, a feeling far worse than the familiar fear of an incoming arrow flight. This is something new, something wrong. The volley covers the 100 yards in the blink of an eye. The first lika to find its mark is not Cahan's, but Luhu's. The young warrior, his fear burned away by pure, focused adrenaline, had chosen his target and thrown with all the desperate strength in his body.
His two obsidian cord stones, spinning at incredible speed, fly directly into the path of a massive destrier 2 horses down from Capitán Vargas. The lead stone smacks hard against the horse's front right cannon bone with a sickening crack that is audible even over the thunder of the charge. The force of the impact alone is staggering, but it is the cord that does the true work. In the nanosecond after the first stone hits, the second stone, still carrying its orbital momentum, whips around the back of the horse's leg. The rawhide cord, tough as iron wire, cinches tight, instantly binding the horse's forelegs together. The effect is instantaneous and catastrophic. The horse is traveling at nearly 30 miles per hour, its powerful legs pumping like pistons. To have them suddenly bound together is like throwing a steel bar into the spokes of a speeding wheel. The horse's head pitches forward violently. It emits a high, piercing scream of terror and pain as its front legs, tangled and broken, buckle beneath the immense weight and forward momentum of its own body. It does not stumble. It somersaults, its hindquarters flying up over its head in a grotesque, unnatural arc. The rider, a young man named Javier with less than a year's service in the colonies, is launched from his saddle like a stone from a catapult. His head flies first over his horse's collapsing neck, his helmet doing nothing to save him, as his skull impacts the hard-packed earth with the sound of a dropped melon. His body ragdolls, limbs flailing, before being crushed by the 1,600 pounds of its own falling mount. And his is only the first. All across the Spanish line, the Pomo Valley arrives. The air is filled with the wet, percussive cracks of stone against bone and the sharp, snapping sound of cinching cords. A horse to the left of Javier's goes down, its back leg caught, the cord wrapping around its fetlock and pulling the leg out from under it. It crashes sideways, sending its rider sprawling into the path of the horse next to it. That horse, a powerful gray, tries to leap over its fallen comrade, but its own legs are caught in midair by another Lika. It lands awkwardly, its forelegs snapping like a pistol shot. Chaos erupts. The disciplined, unstoppable line of Spanish cavalry disintegrates into a scene of utter carnage. Horses scream, a sound of pure agony that cuts through the souls of the hardened soldiers. Men shout in terror and confusion as their mounts are ripped out from under them. The front rank, which was moments away from delivering a decisive, glorious blow, ceases to exist. In its place is a tangled, writhing wall of flailing hooves, broken bones, and crushed men. The riders in the second rank, blinded by the dust and the men in front of them, have no time to react. They plow directly into the horrific pileup. A lancer, his eyes wide with horror, desperately reins his horse to the side, but it's too late. His mount collides with the thrashing hindquarters of a downed stallion, the impact throwing both horse and rider to the ground. The charge, the single most powerful weapon in the Spanish arsenal, has not been stopped or deflected. It has been tripped. It has been brought down by pebbles on a string. From his position, having just avoided the first wave of destruction, Captain de Vargas watches in stunned disbelief. The world seems to slow down, the scene before him unfolding like a silent, horrifying nightmare. His glorious charge has collapsed into a junkyard of shattered bodies and broken animals. The war machine is broken.
The first rank of the Spanish charge is gone, transformed from a line of terror into a horrifying barricade of kicking, screaming horseflesh and broken men. For those in the second and third ranks, the world has become a maelstrom of unpredictable violence. There is no enemy to fight, no line to break, only the sudden, inexplicable collapse of the universe in front of them. A soldier named Felipe, a veteran of a dozen campaigns, finds his horse suddenly trying to leap over the convulsing body of another mount. But there is no room.
He feels a tremendous shock as his horse's chest slams into the downed animal's flank. The impact throws him forward, his faceplate smashing into the back of his horse's neck. He clings desperately to the reins, but his mount is already falling, its legs tangled in the mess. He is pinned, his own leg trapped beneath his dying horse, the immense weight crushing bone and sinew. He screams, but his voice is just one among many in a chorus of agony. The once perfect formation has become a chaotic, multi-layered pile-up. Horses crash into each other, riders are thrown against their own comrades, and the ordered geometry of the charge devolves into a panicked, struggling mob. The dust kicked up by the fall is so thick it chokes the air, a roiling brown cloud from which emanate the sounds of pure hell. The high-pitched, terrifying screams of horses in mortal pain, the sharp crack of breaking bones, the guttural cries of wounded men, and the awful grinding crunch of steel armor being bent and broken.
The battlefield is no longer a plain, it is an abattoir. The structured violence of the charge has been replaced by the desperate, ragged butchery of close-quarters combat. For a Spanish soldado, to be unhorsed in the midst of battle is a nightmare scenario. On foot, his lance is a clumsy pole, his sword is too long for the tight confines of the wreckage, and his armor, which offered protection against arrows and glancing blows, now feels like a leaden shroud, restricting his movement and draining his stamina. He is a warrior built for a specific type of fight, and this is not it. He is a shark stranded on the sand, powerful but helpless. In contrast, the Pomo warriors are fluid and deadly. They move through the tangled chaos of fallen horses and men like water flowing through rocks. Their weapons are perfectly suited for this fight. The short, heavy war club can shatter a helmeted skull or a kneecap with a single brutal blow. The obsidian-tipped spear, light and fast, finds the vulnerable gaps in the Spanish armor, the throat, the armpits, the groin. They fight with a ferocity born of desperation and a lifetime of defending their homes. They are not fighting for a distant king or an abstract god. They are fighting for the survival of their people, for the ground beneath their feet. Sargento Mateo is one of the few who remains mounted, his terrified horse circling the edge of the carnage. He is a veteran, and his mind works quickly, cutting through the panic. He sees isolated pockets of his men, unhorsed and surrounded, being cut down one by one. He sees the Pomo flanking parties wreaking havoc among the supply train and the panicked crossbowmen. The battle is lost. The only thing left to do is survive. "Rally to me," he roars, trying to project his voice over the cacophony. "To the captain, form a square." A few riders, those who manage to control their mounts, hear him and begin to converge on Capitán Vargas's position. Vargas himself is finally engaged in the fight. A trio of Pomo warriors, seeing his plumed helmet and magnificent horse, has targeted him as the leader. One throws a rock that glances off Vargas's helmet, making his ears ring. Another darts in low, trying to hamstring Threno with a wicked-looking obsidian knife. Vargas reacts with the cold fury of a cornered predator. He parries the spear thrust with his sword, the obsidian point scraping harmlessly against the Toledo steel. He spurs Threno, the great stallion lashing out with its hooves, catching one of the warriors in the chest and sending him sprawling. He wheels the horse around and runs down the second warrior, his long sword cleaving through the man's shoulder and into his torso. The third attacker, seeing the fate of his comrades, melts back into the chaos. For a moment, Vargas feels a surge of his old confidence. Here, on horseback, with his sword in hand, he is still a potent force. But the feeling is fleeting. He looks around and sees the true scope of the disaster. Mateo has managed to gather perhaps 15 riders around him. 15 out of an original force of 75. The rest are either dead, dying, or engaged in hopeless, isolated struggles for their lives within the wreckage. The Pomo are everywhere. The battlefield is theirs.
Cahan stands on the back of a dead Spanish warhorse, using the height to direct his warriors. He is not a berserker, lost in the frenzy of battle. He is a field commander, pointing out pockets of resistance, directing his men to overwhelm the scattered survivors. He sees the small group of riders rallying around Vargas and Mateo. He knows that if they are allowed to escape, they will return, and they will return with more men filled with a righteous fury for revenge. They cannot be allowed to leave. He raises his spear and lets out a sharp, piercing cry, a signal that draws the attention of 24 of his warriors. He points his spear directly at Vargas. The target is clear. Mateo sees the Pomo converging on their small, beleaguered group. "Capitan, we must go," he yells, his voice raw with urgency. "We cannot hold. We must retreat." For Vargas, the word retreat is a poison. He has never retreated from a field of battle in his life, certainly not from a band of half-naked savages. To flee would be to accept this humiliation, to validate their impossible victory. "We do not retreat," Vargas snarls, his face a mask of rage and incredulity. "We are soldiers of Spain. We fight. We die." "We are already dying," Mateo counters, his pragmatism overriding his deference to rank. "And for what? For pride? We save who we can, and we ride for the presidio. It is the only way." Just as he speaks, a volley of arrows, fired from the Pomo warriors who have now closed the distance, whistles through the air. One arrow strikes a soldier next to Vargas in the throat, and he topples from his saddle with a choked gasp. Another thuds into the leather barding on Trueno's flank. The great horse screams and rears, nearly unseating Vargas. The reality of their situation finally crashes down on the captain, cold and sharp as a shard of obsidian. Mateo is right. To stay here is to commit suicide. His pride, his honor, all of it is meaningless in the face of annihilation. He grits his teeth, the taste of bile in his mouth. He chokes out, "Sound the retreat." The trumpeter, his face ashen with fear, raises the battered instrument to his lips. He sounds the call, a series of mournful, wavering notes that are the antithesis of the proud, sharp call to charge. It is the sound of defeat. The surviving riders need no other encouragement. They wheel their horses around and dig their spurs in, desperate to escape the field of slaughter. But it is not a clean retreat. The Pomo are not content to let them go. Cahan's warriors pursue them, not with the intention of catching the horses, but of harassing them, of making them pay for every foot of ground they gain. Arrows fly after the fleeing Spaniards. Luhu, with his blood singing with victory, finds himself with a clear shot at a retreating rider. He draws his bow, the yew flexing and releases. The arrow flies true, striking the rider in the back, just below the rim of his cuirass. The man slumps forward in his saddle, but his horse continues to carry him away, a dead man riding for safety. The retreat is a running gauntlet of arrows and thrown spears. Another rider goes down, his horse stumbling as a spear pierces its hind quarters. The man is on his feet in an instant, only to be overwhelmed by 3 Pomo warriors who emerge from the tall grass. Vargas and Mateo, with a dozen men left, finally break free from the pursuit, their horses lathered and bleeding, their own bodies bruised and battered. They ride hard, not daring to look back at the field where they left 60 of their comrades, the pride of the Spanish cavalry, to be stripped of their armor and fed to the vultures. As they crest a small rise, Vargas can't help himself. He pulls Trueno to a halt and turns for a last look. The scene is surreal. The Pomo warriors are moving among the dead and dying, their victory absolute. The setting sun paints the sky in shades of blood orange and deep purple, casting long, dark shadows across the field. The great silence of the plain is returning, punctuated now only by the groans of the dying. The laughter and mockery of the morning feel like they happened in another lifetime, to another man. He has not just been defeated. He has been proven wrong.
his entire worldview shattered by a people he considered to be little more than clever animals. He has learned a lesson, written in the blood of his men. Never underestimate an enemy, no matter how humble their weapons may appear to be.
The ride back to the presidio is a long, silent funeral procession. The 13 survivors, a captain, a sergeant, and 11 soldiers, are ghosts haunting their saddles. The bravado and arrogance of the morning has been scoured away, leaving behind only the hollow shell of shock and shame. They do not speak. There are no words to encompass the magnitude of the disaster. How does one explain the loss of 60 hardened veterans and their warhorses to a band of fishermen armed with stones on strings? Capitán Vargas rides at the head of the ragged column, but he is no longer the bronze monument of the morning. He is a man broken. His plumed helmet is gone, lost somewhere in the chaos. A gash on his cheek from a thrown rock he barely registered weeps blood that traces a dark path down his jaw and onto the gorget of his armor. He does not see the trail ahead. He sees the falling horses. He hears their screams. He feels the impossible, galling weight of a humiliation so profound it is settled deep in his bones, a cold poison that will linger for the rest of his days. Every jingle of his harness, every creak of his saddle is a mockery. The report he must write to the governor spools and unravels in his mind, a tapestry of lies and half-truths, because the full truth is simply unbelievable. He cannot write that his cavalry was undone by a weapon used to hunt waterfowl. He will write of an ambush, of overwhelming numbers, of treacherous terrain. He will construct a narrative that preserves some shred of Spanish honor, even if he knows in the deepest recesses of his soul that there is no honor left. When they finally see the half-finished wooden walls of the presidio, silhouetted against a sky full of stars, no one feels relief. They are not returning conquerors, they are the tattered remnants of a catastrophe. The sentry's challenge from the wall is a formality. The sight of the 13 riders, where 75 had departed, tells the entire story. As they ride through the gates, the small garrison community, the wives, the artisans, the few friars, emerges from the adobe buildings, their faces etched with confusion that quickly turns to horror. They see the empty saddles, the wounded men, the blood-matted flanks of the horses. They see the face of their commander, Capitán Vargas, and they know that something has gone terribly, irrevocably wrong. Vargas dismounts, his movements stiff and clumsy like an old man. He hands the reins of Tueno to a stable boy without a word and stalks toward his quarters, ignoring the questions and cries of his people. He has a report to write, a fiction to create. Sergeant Mateo, his face a mask of grim exhaustion, begins the grim task of accounting for the dead, his voice a low monotone as he recites the names of the fallen to a trembling scribe, each name a hammer blow, a testament to the captain's folly. The story of the Santa Rosa plain would be whispered that night in the barracks and for many nights after. It would become a dark legend, a cautionary tale for new recruits. They would speak of the strange whistling sound, of the way the horses fell as if the ground had opened up to swallow them. The official report would say one thing, but the soldier's story, the true story, would speak of the boleadores, the name they gave the strange weapons, a word borrowed from the tales of the vaqueros in the distant south. The Pomo bola throwers would never be mocked again. Back on the battlefield under the cold light of the moon, the victors move with a quiet, somber purpose. The exhilaration of the fight has faded, replaced by the grim reality of its aftermath. They have lost 7 warriors, and another dozen are wounded. The cost of this victory was not small. Cajan directs the tending of the wounded and the respectful preparation of their dead. Other warriors move across the field, collecting the spoils. The Spanish steel, the swords, the lances, the helmets and breastplates is a treasure beyond imagining. The metal can be broken down, reshaped into tools, knives, and new spear points that are far more durable than obsidian. They strip the ornate saddles and bridles from the dead horses, marveling at the intricate leatherwork. The horses themselves are a bounty. They are a source of meat that will feed the village for weeks, hides that can be tanned for shelter and clothing.
Nothing will be wasted. Luhu works alongside the others, his hands stained with blood, his mind still reeling from the day's events. He helps carry the body of a friend, a boy he grew up with, and the weight of that loss is heavier than any victory. He sees Kahan standing alone on the small rise, looking out over the plain, and he walks to join him. For a long time, neither man speaks. They simply look out at the scene of their improbable triumph. The land is quiet now, the wind whispering through the grass carrying the metallic scent of blood. "They will come back," Luhu says finally, his voice barely a whisper. Kahan nods, his eyes fixed on the distant darkness where the Spanish fled. Yes, they will come back. With more men, with thunder sticks. They will not make the same mistake again. He turns to look at the young warrior, his face illuminated by the moonlight. But what we did here today will become a story. Our children and their children will tell the story of how we met the thunder and made it fall. It will be a story to give them strength when they see the metal men again. It will remind them that the heart of a Pomo warrior is stronger than Spanish steel. They stand there for a while longer as their people finish their grim work, two figures of earth and shadow against the vast starry canvas of the California night. They have won a battle, not a war, but they have won something more lasting, a legend, a testament to the idea that the greatest weapon is not the sharpest sword or the strongest horse, but the mind that can see a different way to fight, the courage to stand against impossible odds, and the wisdom to know that even the mightiest of creatures can be brought low by a simple, elegant understanding of the laws of motion and the unyielding pull of the earth.